Hi, this is the third and final part of a three-part series on Hides de Calera in Spain. The first film was about the Iberian lynx, the second one about the Spanish imperial eagle, and today's film we're going to look at goshawks. Now, I was very tempted not to bother doing the goshawk because I've photographed them so many times before, but I'm glad I did. Camera equipment just gets better and better, and I'm not talking about picture quality. I've never bought a new camera thinking I was going to get better quality pictures. You buy a new camera for its features, its abilities, the things it can do. Last time I was doing Goshawk, I didn't have Pro Capture. I wouldn't have had flickerless viewfinder, which makes it easier to follow the bird when it's flying. And of course I wouldn't be shooting at the ridiculously high ISOs you can shoot at today. So I'm glad I did it. I got some pictures of Goshawks that I've not got before. The goshawk hide is located in a light woodland. We associate goshawks with woodland, but you want some fairly open spaces. To get the light in there, but also to allow you a nice background. You don't normally have to wait very long for the goshawk to come in, but on the day as we approached it we could hear lots of guns going off. There was a lot of shooting in the area. The guide actually suggested we might want to go and try something else, but we stubbornly stuck at it and we had to wait 2 or 3 hours. But the goshawk came in, and once it did, it turned its head every time it heard a gun, but it carried on feeding. Slow motion on the OM1, 240 frames per second. I used to use the Lumix GH6 a lot for video work, but I haven't used it now for months, and that's mainly because I enjoy looking at slow motion at 240 frames per second far more than I like looking at 120 frames per second 4K that the GH6 used to give me. Now both cameras, the OM1 and the GH6, when you get to 240 frames per second it's only in HD, so there's no advantage to me putting the Lumix on anymore. I really should have sold it by now, especially since the G9 Mark II has been announced. It was really a bit too sunny, and I don't really like these bright backgrounds. The bird's in shadow and the background is well lit. I like it the other way round. But all you could do is wait for the sun to go in. Look at the size of the crop on that bird, that big swelling on the chest. It's absolutely full of food. Now there's females and males coming in here. That's definitely a male, slightly smaller, and when it landed on this rock I quickly took a burst of pictures and then swapped over to Pro Capture because I think he's going to launch into flight going off to the left. And Pro Capture just makes this so easy. But to get to my usual bird in flight shutter speed of 2,500ths of a second, I had to boost the ISO to 12,800 because it was so dark. And of course you can't do that with Micro Four Thirds cameras, can you? We've read it on the internet so many times, it's obviously not possible. Although it's gone much duller now as the sun has dropped, I'm much happy with the pictures. I didn't like those brightly lit backgrounds. I've come down to 1600 ISO, shutter speed 3/20th of a second, and I'm more than happy with that with a static bird. This is definitely a female, much larger, looks an older bird as well. And look at all those wasps around it. Now this last sequence of birds in flight is notable for 2 reasons. First of all, the light was pretty poor, so it's taken at 3200 ISO and I only got 800th of a second, but they're all sharp. And the second important point is they're taken with the much cheaper 100 to 400mm OM lens. I'd got it with me as a backup in case something goes wrong with my 150 to 400mm lens, and I thought I'd just give it a run out for the day. This is a drinking pool hide at the same location. Still got the one-way glass and still attaching the tripod head to the shelf. The drinking pool is up in the air on a table, and it attracts all sorts of small birds, but mostly the azure-winged magpie. I perhaps should be calling it the Iberian magpie now, because there's moves afoot to split it from the azure-winged magpie. It's now seen as a different species. And this is a starling, but it's the spotless starling. And the Hawfinch, a very aggressive bird, a very powerful bill on it. Be interesting to see a Hawfinch having a fight with a nuthatch, which is equally aggressive, but with a much sharper bill. And a collared dove.
I've got a dust spot on my camera, Mike.
Yeah, you don't get that with OM cameras.
Yeah, the dust spot is gone.
We'll look briefly at downloading your pictures of an evening. Now, I know not everybody wants to do this. When they're on a trip, some people feel they're on holiday and they don't want to be looking at pictures all evening. They want to socialise with their friends if they're travelling as a group, and I fully understand that. But for me, the single biggest advantage of digital photography is the ability to review your pictures as you go. You can see what you've got right, what you've got wrong. Your learning curve goes through the roof. In the film days, we had to wait for 2 weeks after we got home at the end of the trip before we could see our pictures. Too late to put it right. Today with digital, we can look and learn. So it's very important to me to download my pictures. I do it every lunchtime if we're only doing a morning session and we're coming back to the hotel. And I do it of an evening too. I don't spend a lot of time looking at the pictures, but I download them and have a quick run through them, pick out certain ones just to see if I'm doing okay. And more so with video too, because I have to make sure the sound has worked, for instance. But first things first, when you're traveling abroad, you obviously need an adapter. In Europe, where I am at the moment in Spain, it's a 2-pin round pin adapter. I always carry 2 of these because it's just that sort of thing. If you're moving hotels, you go and leave it behind. But on the whole, once I'm on a trip, it's plugged into my 4-way adapter. So these are just British plugs on the end of here, typical 13 amp square pin plugs. So I only need the one of these and I can charge up 4 different items at the same time. You don't have to buy these 2-pin adapters for every charge you've got. Just take one of these. It weighs next to nothing. This is feather light, this adapter, and I think it cost about £10, something like that. Then, so you can plug in various things. A lot of chargers today just use USB cables to charge things up. Now this is a single 13 amp plug with 1 USB coming out of it. You can get them now that have got 4 USBs coming out of one 13 amp plug. I've got 2 of those on order. Haven't got them yet. That means I can be charging up 4 items just from that one socket. I initially download to my C drive on my laptop and I download them into folders. So I start off with a master folder. So for this trip, that master folder is called Spain. And then I have subfolders underneath it, day 1, day 2, day 3, and I download to those each day. If I come back to the hotel lunchtime, then I end up with 2 folders. I have day 1 morning and day 1 afternoon. And it's those folders on my C drive on the laptop that I'm going to edit. That's the ones where I'm going to cull, going to get rid of the rubbish, leave myself with the better pictures. I don't do the final edit, but I at least get rid of the rubbish. But once you've downloaded to your C drive to a folder, I've then got to back up that folder. So disk drives are getting cheaper and cheaper and bigger too. So I've got 3 terabytes at the moment. These are very lightweight. It's the size of a cigarette pack. and 3 terabytes of data. That just plugs into the computer, into the USB, and I copy that folder. Now these I don't delete at all. This will just be a master copy. And before I go home, before the flight, the last evening, I've got 3 of these external drives, and I'll back up everything to all 3 of them. So I'll copy from this drive to the other 2 as well. And then those external drives on the flight, they don't go in my suitcase. They might go in my coat pocket, they go in the camera bag, but never in the hold. You want those with you. That's your pictures. That's the precious part of the trip. Now the software I use for editing my pictures is Breeze Browser. I've been using it ever since I swapped from film to digital photography, so I'm very familiar with it. It's very intuitive. You play around with it for 5 minutes and you understand it. It's very simple to use and very quick. I can really reduce the numbers of pictures drastically and get it down from 1,000 pictures down to 100 pictures in just 10 minutes or so. Now it does slow down when you get to 1,000 pictures in a folder. It does take it a little while, 30 seconds or so, to form all the thumbnails. But once it's done that, it's just very quick to get rid of the pictures you don't want. The only other thing I would say is I never take the laptop down to the social area, to the restaurant or the bar where we're going to sit and talk, because it does spoil things a bit. You get half a dozen photographers down there all looking at their pictures on their laptop, oohing and ahhing, and nobody talks to each other. So I am into this idea that it can spoil it, and I only do this sort of stuff in my room by myself.